Morning. Had a lot going on this morning in addition to our garden walk this morning. Moving some trees here in the parking lot. You might see that on your way out or after the tour. Got a large tree spade. We're moving some weeping yopons from the front of the entrance building out to our sign to improve that area. So that's going on. In addition to that, we're also removing some live oaks from the Live Oak Plaza area. So those trees were planted about 20 years ago with the intention of taking some out eventually. So that should have been done about 10 years ago. So we're playing some catch up there. So that's going on right now as we speak. We'll sort of bypass part of that area on part of the tour and go to the East Terrace and North Terrace instead of hanging out on the South Terrace for too much time. After we go to the terraces at the house, we'll be heading back down towards the exit path back towards this building. You're welcome to join us on that part of the tour, or you can just see the rest of the gardens at your leisure. Just wanted to point out a few other things in addition to our seasonal color beds this time of year, which are only here because of one saving thing this year. We're really using Plot Saver, which is a gallon right here. This is an all-natural product. If you've got deer damage at your house, in your vegetable garden, or your ornamentals, this is really a good product. For the longest time, I didn't believe in stuff like this because it was just sort of like snake oil. But this is egg solids and some plant oils, and it really works. So I call this sort of the salad season for the deer and squirrels, and this is saving the gardens. So it says you can apply it about every 4 weeks, but if you have irrigation and rainfall, you might want to put it out more frequently than that. Don't drop it. Don't drop it. Other than some of our seasonal color, be on the lookout for Taiwan cherry today. It's starting to bloom. There's a few interesting specimens in the gardens. We have some tropical plants still in the gardens, so we sort of cheat winter in this part of the world. There's some beautiful variegated shell ginger still in the gardens. Really striking color this time of year. Be on the lookout for that. We'll point that out to you. We have some tropical red shrimp still in the gardens. That's a short day bloomer, but has survived throughout the cold season. So we've really had more of a normal winter. The last 2 winters have been pretty mild, and even despite having some freezing or near freezing temperatures, some of these tropicals are still hanging on in the garden. So check those out. And then on our way out almost to this building, you'll see some winter honeysuckle. Just a small planting of that plant right as we're coming in the back here, starting to bloom, a fragrant winter bloomer. Very interesting plant for the gardens for winter fragrance. And then along with winter comes winter fruit and berries. The robins are here eating holly berries and things. So as we walk through the gardens, be on the lookout for them and watch your head. So I didn't mention camellias so this is big camellia season now. It's one of the Bellingrath's favorite plants. Walter Bellingrath and Mrs. Bellingrath were really some of the pioneer camellia folks in this area. So this, and we think of camellias as old-fashioned plants, but they've really only been in this country about 100 years. So Bellingraths were sort of pioneers in getting that plant that we were growing here locally in nurseries into the gardens, and they fell in love with it very quickly and planted many of them in their gardens. So you'll see a lot of specimens in full bloom right now. Been in the garden since the rose garden was redone when the fountain was added. They've been in the ground less than 12 years. So they've gotten very tall, but if you look at the caliper of the trunks, they're not very large. And we'll look at some camellias around the Bellingrath home. The caliper of the trunks is 3 or 4 inches. They've been here a long time. They may have been here since the Bellingraths were here. We lost a lot of camellias and things were damaged in Hurricane Frederick. So a lot of the original plants in the gardens unfortunately disappeared in that bad storm. And I guess even in Camille, it was pretty bad for the gardens too. Secret garden. It's space that's always been here, but one of the last things Bill Barrick did before he retired was sort of redesign this space and made it a nice little off the path kind of sit down and just enjoy the gardens, enjoy the sound of the water. Just a little place to take a break. Here we have a summer tropical cordyline hanging in there. It's got a little bit of winter damage on it, but don't look at that too hard. And then we have a little mimulus planted underneath, which is providing some nice winter color when it's throwing off some blooms there. Have Dusty Miller and a dianthus planted around the pool. Dianthus is not quite blooming yet, but it's just starting to show a little bit of color there. We're going to do some restorative pruning on our azaleas, and this will probably be one area that will get a major cutback. So, yes, ma'am.
How many azalea plants, bushes are there? You know,
a bunch. Somewhere in the propaganda, I think there's some number on the website or in our media packet. That's probably some number we just made up. So that's one of the things that Barbara will start to work on, and definitely mapping and cataloging the camellia collection. Most of the azaleas are just sort of considered a group. The dominant variety is Formosa, and I don't think we have a clue how many are planted here. So, but right behind this giant hedge of Formosa is a camellia garden that we can't see because of this blob of azaleas. On the way out, we'll talk about what we're doing on the exit path, where my plan is to try to hold these azaleas at about 5 to 6 feet. So they're not so dominant, so you can actually see what's planted behind them. You can start seeing some of the structures of the trees and the camellias that are planted behind them. So it's never really the intent to let these azaleas get this large. So right here in this little bed, again, we've got a mixture of some summer tropical plants and some winter annuals. So we have a little viola, that's a little sorbet yellow is the variety. And it's in here with some parsley. That's just regular curly leaf parsley, like you'd see on your dinner plate. And then right back in there with it is just red giant mustard. That's just mustard greens. So, as I said earlier, the deer love all of this. So,
what is the fern?
that's autumn fern.
Is that autumn?
Peeking around through the live oaks back there is one of the Taiwan cherries in the gardens. So you can see it better from around the corner, but it's interesting winter blooming plants.
Are all of your bedding plants grown in your own greenhouses?
Yes. So yes, everything is actually grown on site. We grow about 99.5% of what you see seasonal color-wise. Occasionally we'll go up the street to Shore Acres or somewhere else to throw in some things that we don't have, or if we had a crop failure, or things happen like that. Anyway, chainsaw's going. Again, we've got parsley. This is a 400-foot flower bed, so from start to finish. Parsley, kale, several different types. Again, violas, and there's a few delphiniums. It's actually, we're sort of fudging here a little bit. Spring blooming perennial, or really a summer blooming perennial in most parts of the world, but for us, not a perennial. It's just simply too hot here, probably too wet.
When did you plant all this?
Yesterday. Winter is sort of a.
For my garden, like when
Well,
did I plant it to make
well,
it look
this really needs to get planted in October.
Okay.
We have to. Winter for us is weird because we try to squeeze in a very detailed mum show in the fall, which goes into November, when we really should be planting winter annuals. So we've just really wrapped up planting winter in the last couple of days in some of the areas of the garden. So I really would like to get winter planted earlier. But the Christmas lights and our fall mum show sort of interfere with that a little bit.
Then in the spring, will you pull all this out and plant the spring stuff?
So right now, all these color beds are changed out at least 4 times a year. Some more than that, and then there'll be mini change outs, seasonal change outs. So we'll plant summer, and then by the time we get to July and August, some of the summer annuals are played out, and then we'll take them out and replace them. That bed continues on through September and October. So
When will you pull these out?
we haven't set our date for this change out here, but we'll start moving to spring next month.
Okay.
We'll really watch the weather. We've got spring plants arriving now based on our planting schedule. So they're growing over in the greenhouses now. We had plants arrive yesterday, little rooted cuttings. So not really a set date. It's just really a weather kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
We got Swiss chard, which is also edible, in with the parsley and a little red snapdragon in our hanging baskets. Again, we got that's mustard, red giant mustard with some little kales. That's a little interesting ferny leaf kale. It's called dinosaur kale. So it looks like it's got some kind of disease, but it's supposed to look like that. And lots of parsley. So we grow about 5,000 pots of parsley about every winter. So truly a deer's paradise buffet. So all these live oaks, except for the one in the horseshoe bed, as we call it, these were all planted about 18 years ago. Like I said, with the intention of coming back and thinning them about 10 years ago. Well, we missed that deadline. So Todd recognized that. He's gotten very aggressive about getting some of these out. So we've got to get some of these out, or the whole garden is going to suffer. And that bed there is actually empty because we've got to roll the lift in here, and one of these trees is coming out. So.
Are you saying these trees are only 18 years old?
Yes, sir. How
big were they when they were brought in?
They were, most of them were 30-gallon trees with like a 3-inch caliper.
And they'll grow that much in 18 years?
I planted them. So.
That's really
And these are some of the ones you are moving to other parts of the.
No, sir. Originally we had about 6 of the weeping Yopon holly that were in front of the entrance building,
Right.
which we used to mushroom prune them for some reason. I'll just leave it at that. We've stopped mushrooming them, and they really block the building. And they're a problem at Christmas because it blocks the view up front. We can't see the ticketing lines because the hollies are in the way. So we've got a large tree spade that's moving them today out to the sign to sort of landscape the sign area. So
you're just going to have to remove some of these trees.
unfortunately, they were planted tight to give you that immediate effect. But like I said, we're past due.
Sure.
Our thinning. This garden was originally, like this. It was planted, well, not planted, but there were native water oaks in this part of the gardens originally that went down in either Camille or Frederick.
Right.
And so the intent was to sort of restore this garden back like it was when the Bellingraths were here. And so these trees were planted to bring that back. The boxwood hedge was restored. And see, we're really a little bit too shady in here. We're getting too shady for camellias that like a little shade, but not really this much shade. The boxwood is suffering because of the shade. And so we really need to introduce the light back to this part of the garden. Terrace. This is where the lodge originally sat, which was the first Bellingrath home. There were fishing camp shacks on the property when the Bellingraths bought the property. Once they decided to spend more time down here, they built the lodge, which sat here on the south terrace. That building was removed in the 1970s. This garden was put in. The original intent was to maybe extend the home south, but the Bellingraths decided not to do that. So, keep thinking he's going to turn that off in a second. Anyway, again, we got sort of the same plants, different colors, different types. Upright, large dianthus, smaller dianthus in the front, some Dusty Miller, and some kales and cabbages in this little garden. This is the Fowl River, the river of birds. This is one of the highest spots on the river and one of the highest spots in South Mobile County. So even with the storm surge of the recent hurricanes, the water's never really gotten anywhere near the Bellingrath home. So we're in a pretty safe spot. When Mr. Bellingrath had the opportunity to buy the point, he bought it. He wanted to control his view. So the gardens is actually surrounded by about 900 acres, that most of which Mr. Bellingrath bought in his lifetime. The foundation has acquired some property after his death, but he recognized the fact early on that he wanted to protect himself from outside development. So he didn't want, well, I guess it wouldn't be condos, but things like that coming up around him. So
Is all of the undeveloped from here all the way down to there part of the gardens then?
well, the point, I guess, is most of the point is marshland.
Yeah.
The gardens, the foundation owns all the way up to the first boat dock house.
Yeah, and then back down to docks again over here. Then back down to where homes are here, all the way back that way?
Well, not on the other side of the river,
Oh, okay.
but the gardens property goes
yeah.
around the little corner here onto the north, and then we own around the corner to the south. So this is one of the gardens that was just planted like last week. So little purple viola, and then there's a dianthus. It's not quite blooming yet, but they're in the middle of in the bed. This water feature actually originates in the courtyard of the Bellingrath home. So it comes underneath the house, underneath the original. That was a screened-in porch originally. This east porch. Bellingrath recognized very quickly they wanted to glass some of this east side of the house in. So their dining, their main dining room, not the formal dining room, but the one they mostly use is here on the right. It was also originally a screened in with louvered windows, and they glassed it in pretty quickly after moving in. Those would be some narcissus, some buttercups, and I don't remember which one they planted in there. I'll have to ask Susan. We've used several colors of daffodils, and I've just lost track, so it'll be a surprise. This time last year, I could not see the river to my left from here. These azaleas were cut back last spring, so you can see how quickly they responded. They were cut down to about 16 to 18 inches, and we intend to keep them a little bit higher, but we'll probably come in this year and do a second year pruning like we've done on the exit path to get them to do some further branching, but really trying to hold these at 5 or 6 feet with some yearly or scheduled pruning. So the intent is to be able to see the river from this part of the garden, or from the north terrace here. You wouldn't have wanted, I guess the Bellingrath would have wanted some privacy, but they wouldn't have wanted to totally block their view of the river. So this is the north terrace, and this is the first time I've ever had a group on the north terrace. We normally bypass this part of the gardens because it's just so hard to get to sometimes with a group, but with the south terrace and all the racket going on over there, we thought we'd come over here. Again, this was the azaleas where you could not see the river from where we were standing last year, and then this also opens us up to a lot of the camellias that are here. These camellias are some of the older camellias in the gardens. And again, this is sort of like a small little private garden the Bellingrath would have had. They would want some privacy, but still to be able to enjoy the view of the river. We're trying some knockout roses in this garden. So this is really, I guess, the first roses out of the rose garden in a decade. So these beautiful cast iron urns were moved last spring. They were sitting down over here, and one of them was underneath this large camellia, and so it became very difficult to even see it, much less plant underneath it and get the pots to be the same. You would want matching planters sitting side by side, and so we rigged up. They're very heavy. So we emptied the soil out of the containers and actually used scaffolding on wheels and rigged up a dolly to move them from that side to here. So I think Angela has a short little video of the process. So luckily we made it intact. Some of these older camellias are not in very good shape. They're getting old. This part of the gardens, even with the river exposure, is really, I guess, didn't have trees come down in storms. But look at the size of this camellia trunk. I mean, it's enormous. So the size of the tree is really not that large. It's really about the same size as some of those newer camellias that we saw right going into the rose garden, but this one's in really bad shape and probably won't be with us very much longer, but we're going to leave it as long as it looks halfway decent. But yeah, these are some of the oldest camellias in the garden. We had a Eagle Scout, Katie Simpson, first female Eagle Scout in, I guess, in the Mobile area. So her project was bat boxes. So we installed bat boxes late this summer. There's 7 or 8 on property, scattered about, trying to attract bats to help with some insect control.
Do they work?
Supposedly, and believe it or not, that box will hold several hundred bats.
You're kidding.
They must be really small.
Now, I was amazed that I guess our native bat is not very big, and once they fold their wings, they're actually pretty small. So they're actually nesting bats on the boat dock. So there's a very similar architectural detail on some of those pilings that resembles the bat house baffles, I'll call it. And so they are actually nesting on the boat dock now. So, so hopefully we'll start seeing more bats in the gardens, taking care of some of these mosquitoes and other things that make it hard to enjoy the gardens.